Yo, what's going on, guys? CultofMush back at it with a $700 KABYLAKE gaming PC build. Now, a lot of you guys have been requesting me to do a build specifically with the new CPUs. They're not even that new at this point, but hey, I haven't done a $700 build in a little bit now, and I need to get back to doing builds more consistently, so why not kill two birds with one stone? And while this build is $700 right now, there's not a lot of deals going around, so if you find a lot of these parts at a good time, you can definitely get this build for around $630 to $650 if you find some decent deals. And when I say decent deals, I'm talking about deals that are readily available like once or twice a week. So $700 right now, but you can definitely get it for a little bit cheaper. Starting things off with the CPU, I went with the Intel Core i5-7500 3.4 GHz quad-core processor. This is going for around $195. Going with something like the 7600K is just gonna be a little too expensive for a build like this, especially considering with the 7600K, you'll also have to get a decent CPU cooler, and that's just gonna be a little too much at a $700 budget. However, the i5-7500 is still a very solid CPU. It's clocked in at 3.4 GHz, which is very nice, and a quad-core Intel CPU is always gonna give you very nice gaming performance, especially if it's paired with a good enough video card, which in this build, it's paired with a pretty good GPU. And for $195, I do think this is one of the best i5s when you're talking about dollar for dollar performance. For the motherboard, I went with the ASRock H270 Pro 4 ATX LG1151 motherboard. This is around $100, which is one of the issues with the KABYLAKE CPUs, is that a lot of the motherboards, if you want to buy one that's going to work right out of the box and you're not going to have to update the BIOS or anything, they are a little bit expensive at around, $90 to $100 for the cheaper ones. But this is a very nice board from ASRock. It's got a really nice white and black color scheme. It is a full-sized ATX motherboard going for $100 right now on Newegg. There is a $5 mail-in rebate, knocking it down to $95. As far as specifications go, it's got 4 RAM slots up to DDR4 2400 and up to 64 gigabytes of max memory supported. It's got RAID support, 6 SATA 6 gigabit per second ports, and onboard USB 3 header. So for $95 after that $5 mail-in rebate, or for $100 if you decide to opt out of that, it's a solid budget and motherboard that's going to work great for the build. Moving on to RAM, I went with G.Skill Ripjaws V Series 8GB, 2 4GB sticks. This is going for around $56, which for 8GB of DDR4 RAM is a pretty solid price. I've noticed that this year, RAM prices have really been fluctuating a lot. Sometimes you'll see them for like $55 like here, and then other times to pick up 8GB of RAM, you're paying like $65, $70. So just keep your eyes out on RAM prices. They really fluctuate. At least as far as I've noticed, I've really noticed them fluctuating all over the place. Right now, for this kit of RAM, $56 to me seems like a pretty good deal. And it is 8GB of RAM. I know a lot of people are opting to go with 16GB of RAM these days. Hey, if you want to drop the $90 to $95 to get that instead, be my guest. However, in my experience, 8GB still gets the job done. In my PC, I still only have 8GB of RAM, and you're not going to experience too many limitations with that unless you start doing things like live streaming, video editing, a lot of stuff like that. Then 8GB will be a little bit limiting, but considering that, I'm a YouTuber and I'm getting by with 8GB of RAM, I guess that's a pretty good thing. So 8GB of RAM is definitely still serviceable, but just be open-minded to an upgrade in the future. The motherboard's got 4 RAM slots, so it's a very easy upgrade to make, but for now, 8GB of RAM is still going to get you by no problem. Moving on to storage, no SSD in this build, unfortunately, just couldn't fit it into the budget. The mechanical drive, obviously, it's going to be the Western Digital Caviar Blue 1TB. This is just the go-to 1TB mechanical drive. It's around $48 to $50 depending on where you pick it up from. 1TB of storage seems to be enough for most people. If you want more than that, there are 2 and 3TB drives readily available for like $80 to $120 depending on how much storage you want. Or if you're the kind of person where you don't need much storage at all, you can forego the mechanical drive entirely and just pick up an SSD like a 120 or 240GB SSD. If you really think you can get by with that, then I would do that. Personally, I download a lot of games, movies, stuff like that, and 240GB would just not be enough for me. I would personally at least need 1TB and then get an SSD along with that. That's an upgrade you can make in the future. Or if you just want to grab a 120GB SSD for, $40 right away, that is something I would definitely think about if you do have the extra cash to drop. Otherwise, getting a Caviar Blue 1TB is going to be serviceable. Just again, like with the RAM, be open-minded to picking up an SSD in the future. Moving on to the video card, I went with the MSI Radeon RX 480 4GB GPU for around $180. Honestly, at a $700 budget, I wanted to get something a little bit higher end than this, maybe a 488GB, but with the CPU being close to $200 and the motherboard being $100, you really can't go with something like the 8GB RX 480 or even a GTX 1060. The RX 480 4GB video card is still a fantastic GPU for the price, don't get me wrong. If you're looking to game at 1080p, this is the perfect GPU to pick up. And while right now it is $180, I've seen this GPU as low as $155, and if you can find that deal, I'm sure it'll be available within the next week, to be perfectly honest, then I would grab it ASAP, because that is a superb deal for a 4GB 480. And if you do want to drop the extra $20, you can pick up 8GB RX 480s for just $200, and that is a fantastic deal if you're in the market for that GPU. I'll leave that option up to you guys, but whichever route you go, you're going to get a ton of performance for your money. It's just pretty amazing how cheap quality 1080p gaming has gotten. I mean, with a video card that's only $180, and like I said, it's readily available for cheaper than this if you find a good deal. You're just getting very high performance, much higher than what you would find on a console. But moving on from that, for the power supply, I went with the SeaSonic S12 620 watt 80 plus bronze certified PSU. This is $50, a 620 watt power supply. Honestly, a little bit more wattage than you need, but hey, considering it's only $50, it's a quality power supply from SeaSonic, who have a great track record with their PSUs. If you want to save a little bit of money here, honestly, you can pick up like an EVGA 500 watt power supply and still be fine, and those are like $30. Personally, I would just drop that little bit of extra cash and get this quality PSU from SeaSonic. Finally, for the case, I went with the Corsair 200R ATX mid-tower case. This is nothing too special. Comes to the market at a very cheap price of around $55. Aesthetically, I really like its plain black look, and it's going to be able to house all your components no problem, and it's got some options for cable management, so that shouldn't be too big of an issue. If you want to drop a little bit more money and get a nicer case, you can pick up like the NZXT S340. Those are around $65 to $70. But honestly, I would probably go with the 200R for a build like this, because I didn't really go hard on the color scheme. But yeah, that's a very minor issue when you're talking about picking up a case at this price. I would just get the 200R. It's a very good case for $55. So that's gonna wrap up this video, guys. As always, thanks for watching. If you have a request for a future video, you can leave that in the comments section down below. And if you have any other questions, as always, leave that in the comments section down below. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.